Survivor Kaoh Rong premiered on February 17, 2016, as after the success of Survivor Cagayan, Survivor would try to recreate that magic with this cast, as the 18 players are split up into Brains, Brawns, and Bueaty in the beaches of Kaoh Rong. And yeah, just gonna say, the casting was a bit more questionable this time around, but nonetheless, let's talk about it. On the Brawns tribe, Jason made the majority with Scott, Jennifer, and Sydney, and targeted Alicia for being the clear outlier on the tribe. On the Brains tribe, we saw 3 trios form in Joe and Debbie, Aubrey and Neil, and Liz and Peter, with Debbie seemingly the first target due to her interesting personality to say the very least.
Telling rope climbing, blah, 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 blah. I'm a chemist, but I've been a photonics manufacturing supervisor, an electronics expert, and between jobs I fill in at Red Lobster as a server.
On the Beauties, the girls quickly formed an alliance and wanted to recruit Sweet Old Ty as a 4th member, but were quickly sketched out by him after they caught him looking for an idol. We also had a very hard to watch moment this episode, as Jenny got a bug stuck in her ear, and my goodness, I cannot imagine the pain that poor woman went through.
But instead of crawling out, it is getting deeper in my ear. I can't sleep, I can't get comfortable. I feel like there's blood coming out of my ear. I don't know what it's doing to me. It's so painful.
At the immunity challenge, Darnell lost the goggles, which ended up costing the Brawns the challenge, sending them to the first tribal council of Kaoh Rong. However, Alicia still seemed to be the clear outsider target, with her continued scheming making things even worse. But at Tribal, the tribe split the vote on the 2, and on the revote, Darnell was surprisingly sent home. And while at first glance this seemed like an insane overreaction for losing goggles, Scott and Jason simply wanted to break up him and Sydney to bring Sydney in closer to their alliance, and thus, Aqua Dumper Darnell became the first boot of Survivor Kaoh Rong.
Darnell, the tribe has spoken.
After escaping elimination, Alicia desperately tried to prove her worth to the Brawns by making fire, but the other 4 were locked solid. Ty would then find the idol hidden in a box, but needed to retrieve the key at the top of a tree, but was unable to find time to do so. At the immediate challenge, Brawns once again lost, sending them to what seemed to be a pretty straightforward Alicia boot. However, Jennifer, who felt like she'd be next to go after Alicia, campaigned to the girls to form an all-girls alliance to break up Scott and Jason, but immediately regretted this, as she knew this could make her the new target, and due to this paranoia, she absolutely blew up at Tribal, causing her to go from safe to voted out in a 3-2 vote.
You know what? Hold on. Okay. Please trust the original alliance we had. Nothing has changed. So, please believe me.
Second person voted out of Brains versus Brawns versus Bueaty. Jenny. Jenny, the tribe has spoken.
Alicia would find a clue to the idol and shared it with Sydney, but she would go on to tell the guys, and they would end up buying it, along with Ty on the Beauty tribe, with all of them realizing that if they were able to combine the idols, it would become the super idol, an idol that could be played after the votes were read. Speaking of Ty, after he had his heart broken by having to kill the chickens, everyone consulted him minus Nick, making him the target for the Beauties. On the Brains, Liz and Peter realized that Aubrey and Neil was a much bigger duo threat than Debbie and Joe, turning on them, and thus, Joe and Debbie went from outsiders to swing votes. Beauties would continue their dominance at the immediate challenge, with the Brawns winning their first, sending the Brains to Tribal. Liz and Peter felt Neil was the biggest threat and campaigned to split the votes on him and Aubrey with Joe and Debbie, but those two didn't trust Peter's schemish attitude at all, and Joe was specifically still annoyed with Liz after the two got into an argument. So at Tribal, Liz and Peter were officially broken up as the two got the vote split on them, with the weaker Liz being sent home on the revote.
Liz, the tribe has spoken.
Episode 4 now of Survivor Kaoh Rong, an episode that changed Survivor forever, as Survivor would change its location permanently after this brutal reward challenge, and in general, it almost got the show cancelled after Caleb nearly died.
Do you need medical?
Yeah, I'd like to just keep an eye on it.
Yeah, he needs medical. He needs medical.
Take a look at Caleb, too.
Tell me what's going on, Joe. This is Caleb getting overheated, struggling to cope with the temperature.
Give him 1 second here, 1 second.
Hey, you're good, bud.
Sorry, Caleb.
Nothing really else of note happened this episode, other than Alicia complaining to Scott and Jason about their attitudes during the challenge, and after the Brawns once again lost immunity, the tribe was absolutely done with her, and thus, she was voted out unanimously, with literally no scrambling being shown. Poor Alicia was put on a bad tribe, treated like garbage all season, and her elimination is one of the least important ever.
Alicia, the tribe has spoken.
Neil found the Brains idol just in time for a tribe swap, as the tribes went from 3 to 2, with the Chan Lo tribe being Debbie, Neil, Sydney, Jason, Michelle, and Nick, while Gondol was Aubrey, Joe, Peter, Anna, Ty, and Scott, with Julia being sent to Exile Island, where she would join the losing tribe after Tribal. On both tribes, the Beauties were in trouble since they had yet to lose a member, and Julia would be joining them as well. However, Scott was able to figure out that Ty had the idol, and thus wanted to keep him around so they could potentially work together down the road and use the super idol. At the immunity challenge, Chan Lo won, sending Gondol to Tribal, where the vote was between Ty and Anna. Between Scott wanting to keep around Ty and Anna's campaign for the arrogant Peter, she was in the most danger, with the only question going in the Tribal being if Ty would waste his idol, as he didn't know if he could fully believe in Scott's promises that he was safe. But at Tribal, Ty held on to the idol, and Anna was voted out unanimously.
Anna, the tribe has spoken.
After Julia joined Gondal, Peter simply couldn't help himself and conspired with Ty to take out Joe next. On Chan Lo, Debbie aligned herself with Nick, which made Michelle the target when it came to the Beauties, and after costing her tribe the reward, she felt even more like the outsider. But lucky for Michelle, Chan Lo would win immunity, sending Gondal back to Tribal. When word got back to Joe and Aubrey that Peter had been scheming against Joe, they switched the vote to Julia, as they didn't want to vote out a Brain member despite Peter proving to be distrustful. However, despite his second life, Peter didn't learn his lesson, as he told Ty and Scott about the new plan, which made them distrust him as he had originally been campaigning for Joe, and thus try to get Julia and Aubrey on board to turn the vote around on Peter. While Julia was obviously down to save herself, Aubrey was in the middle about what to do, but in a little last-second decision, she decided that Peter was simply too untrustworthy, sending the Obama lookalike home in a 4-2 vote.
Sixth person voted out. Peter, need to bring me your torch? Peter, the tribe has spoken.
The final 11 merged, with the Brawns targeting Neil after Sydney and Jason spotted a bulge in his pocket and assumed it was the idol, so they went to work on recruiting the Beauties. Ty and Julia obviously were keen to join up with the Brawns after Scott saved them, while Debbie's personality altered the Beauties, which put their Brains even more on the outs. Neil, who knew he was the target, showed Aubrey his idol, but this only made her even more paranoid, as she knew she would likely be the split vote target at Tribal. And after Nick won the first individual immunity challenge, this is exactly what it looked like would happen. However, Aubrey got the break of a lifetime, but unfortunately, it came at the expense of her ally, as Neil was forced to be pulled from Survivor after the doctor discovered an infected knee, taking the idol with him, and becoming the first member of the jury.
You are pulling Neil from the game.
I think I have to.
You guys should consider yourselves lucky because they're pulling me from the game. It has been an honor and a privilege to play with each and every one of you.
Episode 8 begins with the reward challenge, with the team of Debbie, Julia, Nick, Scott, and Ty coming out on top, earning themselves an ice cream feast. The majority alliance decided to split the votes on Debbie and Aubrey, as this would take out a Brain, and most importantly for the guys, take out a girl, as they were afraid of an all-girls alliance. However, when Nick talked with Julia about this possibility, Sydney overheard and ratted him out to Jason and Scott. However, she felt untrusted by the two after their conversation. At the immunity challenge, Nick publicly stated that he felt safe and dropped out for food, along with many others, with Ty coming out on top to win immunity. The plan still seemed like an easy Brawn and Beauty majority split vote on Aubrey and Debbie, but Sydney then decided to make the girls alliance actually come into fruition after losing trust in the guys, campaigning to the Brain and Beauty girls to blindside Nick. And at Tribal, the girls and Joe would indeed come together to take out the cocky Nick, sending him to the jury in a 6-2-1-1 vote.
Nick, the tribe has spoken.
After getting betrayed by the girls and Joe, the three male outsiders of Scott, Jason, and Ty pledged their allegiance to each other and knew they still had hope due to the super idol. However, in an attempt to sabotage the tribe, Scott and Jason put out the fire and hid the axe, much to the dismay of Ty.
We should just end the speculation.
Well, pouring water on the fire? Come on, man, that's
Part
a
of the
cheap
game.
shot.
You're the fire starter. Start the fire.
I don't even know what to say.
At the reward challenge, Julia opted to join up with the outsiders, with that force them coming out on top, winning a Chinese feast. At the reward, Julia admitted she wanted to work with the guys, as she felt she had a better chance against them than the girls. Back at camp, the majority was scared this was indeed Julia's intentions, and plotted to blindside her next, as this would not only take out someone who wasn't loyal, but it would also waste the idols, as Aubrey was confident the guys were sabotaging the tribe, in an attempt to get the votes onto them. However, Debbie refused to vote out her good friend Julia. At the immunity challenge, Julia unknowingly won a must-have immunity, which stifled the majority's plans. So, they decided to switch to her ally Debbie instead. But a problem arose when Joe refused to side with Sydney, Aubrey, and Michelle, as he was dead set on the Scott and Ty split vote plan. So, they were forced to recruit Julia as a fourth vote, and take out someone who was trying to save her, leaving Julia in the swing vote spot, as the minority guys wanted to vote out Sydney as payback for flipping. And at Tribal, Julia's wild episode culminated with her sticking with the girls, blindsiding Debbie in a 4-3-2 plurality vote.
Eighth person voted out, and the third member of our jury. Debbie. Debbie, the tribe has spoken.
Episode 10 now of Survivor Kaoh Rong, one of the greatest episodes in Survivor history, as it started with the Minority Alliance super excited to still be in the game with both their idols still intact, which meant they could guarantee their safety at the next tribal, as the majority could no longer split their votes. The final 8 then competed for 3 different rewards, with Julia earning letters from home, Michelle won herself a burger meal, and Ty won an extra vote that was good until the final 5. Julia, who was playing both sides, campaigned to the girls that they should vote out Ty to flush the idol, but Aubrey, who was still suspicious of Julia, ratted her out to the guys. However, this only made Aubrey seem even more threatening to them, and thus, she became their new target over Sydney. At the immunity challenge, Jason came up huge for the Minority Alliance, as his win meant they could guarantee Aubrey was going home, since both Ty and Scott could play their idols, or again, use it as a super idol if need be. With her survivor life on the line, Aubrey recruited Ty to join up with her, Sydney, and Joe to blindside Scott, telling him that Scott and Jason were just using him, and would eventually turn on him to take Julia to the end, as he was simply too much of a jury threat. The swing vote Ty weighed his options, as he could side with the bullies or the beloved Aubrey. And let's just say, this made for an all-time iconic tribal council.
Ninth person voted out, and the fourth member of our jury. Scott.
What's going on? Wow. Wow.
Scott, the tribe has spoken.
Ty tried to explain his shocking move to Jason, but he wasn't having any of it, and knew he was next on the chopping block. Split in the pairs for reward, the duo of Sydney and Michelle won, and chose Aubrey to join them for a helicopter ride and a picnic. Both the reward winners and losers plotted against Ty, as the former saw him as too likable, while the latter, mainly Jason, wanted revenge on him. However, after Michelle won immunity, the majority realized that Julia was a much bigger all-round threat than Ty, but Michelle and Sydney were hesitant to lose such a good friend. But in the end, they played with their heads over their hearts, as Julia was sent to the jury in a 5-2 vote.
Julia, the tribe has spoken.
After receiving 2 votes at Tribal, Ty revealed his advantage to the majority as a way to earn their trust. Jason also campaigned to the majority that he would be a perfect goat to take to the end, especially over the likes of Aubrey and Ty. The final 6 were split up into 2 teams of 3 at the reward challenge, with Jason, Ty, and Michelle winning a picnic and a trip to a local sanctuary to visit rescued animals. At the reward, Ty bonded with his former ally Jason, and thus considered keeping him around and wanted to use his extra vote to take out Michelle, as it was very clear how great her social game was during the reward. And after Sydney won immunity, Ty rallied the majority to turn on Michelle. However, everyone realized that this would only further Ty's resume, and thus decided to flip the votes on the Jason instead. At Tribal, Ty indeed used his 2 votes to vote for Michelle, but literally nobody else was on board, as Jason voted for Joe, while the other 4 put their votes on the Jason, sending him to the jury in a 4-2-1 vote.
Jason, the tribe has spoken.
After being left out of the vote, Ty was able to reconnect with his allies, with the likes of Sydney and Aubrey agreeing with him that Michelle was a big threat that needed to be taken out soon. At the reward challenge, 71-year-old Joe won, and chose Sydney and Aubrey to come with him for an overnight spa and feast, where the 3 then made a final 3 alliance. But Aubrey knew deep down that both Sydney and Michelle were bigger threats than Ty, and wanted to go to the end with him and Joe. So if nobody having Michelle in their final 3 plans, she was a goner if she didn't win immunity, and likely indeed would have been the 5th placer this season had Joe not gone too hard on the meat during the feast, and thus was forced to be pulled after a backed up urinary tract.
As the urine can't get out the bladder, that pressure can be transmitted upwards into the kidneys, can put pressure on the kidneys and cause long-term kidney damage.
You are pulling Joe from the game.
I think with the potential risk of long-term kidney damage, it's the only safe thing to do.
Don't be crying. You get him start crying, I won't be able to take that. You kidding me? Be well, all of you.
The finale of Survivor Kaoh Rong begins with the final 4 competing for a protein feast that would greatly help them for the final immunity challenge, with Aubrey coming out on top, and chose the strong Sydney to join her, as the 2 knew they had to beat Michelle. But at the immunity challenge, the outsider Michelle won one of the most clutch immunities in Survivor history, and put the cherry on top with her badass celebration.
Michelle has it! Michelle wins individual immunity! Guaranteed spot in the final 3!
So with Michelle off the table, allies Sydney and Aubrey had to turn against each other, knowing they were each other's biggest competition. While Michelle was down for Aubrey, Aubrey's campaign once again won over Ty, and thus we got a 2-2 tie, leading to an emotional fire-making challenge that many thought at the time would determine the winner of Survivor Kaoh Rong.
This may be as far as it goes for Sydney.
There it is! Aubrey survives Tribal Council 8. Sydney becomes the 8th member of our jury.
Well, Sydney, this is the end for you. You become the 8th member of the jury. You need to bring me your torch. Sydney, the tribe has spoken.
The final 3 approached the Day 38 challenge thinking it would be the final immunity challenge, but were then shocked with the announcement of a lifetime, as Jeff told them they were going to the final tribal council, and that they would be playing for a jury removal advantage. Michelle would come out on top, and debated between Neil and Joe, who were both locked votes for Aubrey, but in the end, with being the first jury member, she felt like Neil would have more influence over the jury, and thus used her vote to eliminate him from the jury, and judging by his reaction, I think it's safe to say, this was the right decision.
You came to this game thinking you're a badass bitch, but you're more like a cute little puppy. He's still suckling at the teat, and I don't think you stand a chance.
Michelle, Ty, and Aubrey now, one of the strongest final 3s in Survivor history. While Ty no doubt played hard, his messy and cutthroat gameplay was blasted by the jury. And in the end, with the vote between the lovable Aubrey and the social queen Michelle, the jury simply couldn't overlook that $1 million social game, and thus, Michelle was crowned the winner of Survivor Kaoh Rong, winning in a controversial 5-2 vote.
The winner of Survivor, Michelle.
Thank you guys so much for watching this retrospective of Survivor Kaoh Rong. Let me know what you thought this season in the comments below, along with who you would have voted for. Be sure to check out my previous installments of the series as well, and until next time, have a good one, guys.